Are you counting down the days? I know there's a lot of people out there that have that number right in their head, whatever it is. It's less than 100 now for college football, for Florida State football on that opening night against LSU. Welcome into the chat. Leave those comments and questions. You guys know the drill. We talk Florida State football here each and every Wednesday with you at 6 o'clock Eastern time. Bring a friend or two, bring 50. And we got Logan Robinson here from Nole Game Day. Check out what he's got going, which includes tonight's show, right? Nole Game Day at 7 Eastern?
Yes. We'll be live at
Absolutely.
7 o'clock.
All right.
Yep.
So doubleheader of Florida State talk here with us. Track Logan to his show with Nole Game Day at 7 Eastern. What else is going on?
Nothing much. We're in May. We just spent 10 minutes in a production meeting trying to find things to talk about, but it's now at the point where we need the viewers and the listeners and the watchers to communicate in the chat with us, give us some questions or topics for us to run through. I know we only got 30 minutes or so, but our episode at 7 o'clock is strictly going to be a little bit of the ACC and what they're trying to do revenue sharing wise, and the rest of it will be full on Q&A just because there is absolutely nothing that has happened this week, which is fine. That's okay. We deserve a little bit of relaxation before the 9-month stretch begins of craziness. So, but yeah, nothing much, Mark, just rolling on, count down the days until we get closer and closer to fall camp. We've got some recruiting visits happening soon that we'll be keeping a close eye on and hanging out outside the Moore in Tallahassee, but just kind of hanging out, just chilling a little bit. It's nice.
Mike Alford has made this statement a few times recently that Florida State would rank in the top 5 in the Big Ten and also the SEC in revenue, so that they would be good additions to those two conferences, as Logan alluded to, and they'll have a full conversation coming up at 7 Eastern. The plan is still in progress, still being discussed. So the ACC has released the announcement of a plan that's underway. They have not released the details. Basically, that's coming in the next few months. As stated here per the ACC, basically the implementation of the success and incentives will come solely from performance of teams and revenue generating postseason competition. All other revenues will continue to be equally shared as currently outlined. So really the only major component of this that needs to be answered is what the distribution is going to be. How widely dispersed are those percentages going to be to favor the teams that generate the money versus the schools that don't generate most of the money once they go to postseason play? Because otherwise it's all going to remain the same. So there is incentive to go to the NCAA basketball tournament, men's and women's. There is incentive to go to a college football playoff, to go to major bowl games and earn the big paycheck. But we'll just have to wait and see what the ACC is willing to do from a percentage standpoint. You know, is this just a slightly bigger slice of the pie, or is this really going to weigh heavily toward those schools that are generating the postseason income?
It really just seems like they're trying to save themselves by doing these small little things, doesn't it, Mark? Like,
yeah,
press release was like under 500 words, just like, hey, we're working on this. We're going to try to do something here and try to do the obvious. I feel like that's what you should be doing in any conference, is if a team is making it as far as you can and going to the college football playoff or going to a New Year's Six bowl of that magnitude, these teams should be rewarded with higher revenue sharing. That's how it should be, I feel like. That still doesn't take away the brand that Florida State brings, or the brand that Clemson or Miami, TV ratings, where it's a little bit different than some other teams inside of the conference that aren't aren't bringing that type of viewership or revenue and TV ratings. That's not at the level of these teams, and most certainly Florida State, which is at the top of that, and the ACC. So, that's a cool little thing that they're wanting to do. It's not going to happen this year, but it's going to go into 2024. They're trying to do that 2024, 2025, but just seems like that might have been a discussion that a lot of the presidents and ADs they had while in that spring meeting that they just had, what was it, early last week. So it's just trying to save some face a little bit, try to keep some people around, and maybe also kick some guys down below in the ACC to give them some, I don't know, some push to perform better. But still, that doesn't do anything for the FSU or Clemson or Miami, in my opinion.
No, it's a Band-Aid. It's a very small Band-Aid that's not going to cure the situation. Not at all. But they're trying to do something. The only two examples I can think of this to where off the top of my head, I know and remember how these leagues distribute money is the Pac-12 commissioner 2 commissioners ago, the one before Larry Scott, they did something like this. So when USC was in its heyday under Pete Carroll, they were making a lot more money than everybody else because they were generating national championships and Rose Bowls and making more money than anybody else for the conference. So there was an unequal distribution of money. Now, I don't know the specifics of all that, but I just know that that was the case. Then Larry Scott, the Pac-12 commissioner who just left office about a year ago, he took over and he pushed to go to equal distribution. Now, whether the Pac-12 and their football decline was because of that, it certainly came at the same time. And maybe that was a bad move and a bad timing for the Pac-12 because it did coincide with the Pac-12's demise in football. I do know that the Big Ten, unless it's changed for as long as I've been a fan and been understanding of these situations, the Big Ten has equally distributed postseason money, bowl money, all of that. So you take somebody like Indiana that's gone years and years and years and years at times without even going to a bowl game, and Ohio State getting their $15 million from the Rose Bowl or whatever the figure is. It's pretty crazy. It's the highest. They're sharing just as much money with Indiana and Rutgers as they're receiving. So I guess, again, my point in all of this last week was when you're making the most money, then you seem to be a little bit more willing to divide it all evenly, saying with the mindset that, well, we're making the most money anyway, we'll distribute it equally. But when you're making what's soon to be the least amount of money or near it, speaking of the ACC, then and you see yourself as a Florida State where you're not just competing against the ACC, you've got a history since Bobby Bowden took over of competing nationally. So Florida State doesn't just look at its competition as Clemson and whomever else is going to be a contender in the ACC. As Mike Alford addressed when he met with the Board of Trustees, they see their competition as the elite programs in college football. They see, the top tiers of the SEC, fill in the blanks. We all know who the schools are. So they see themselves as we need to compete with them. So, I again, if they were making twice as much money or more, because it's going to be more like 3 times as much money once the Big Ten contract kicks in, then you're going to be more willing to say, hey, we're making more money than anybody else. We're fine. But when you're scrapping for every bit you can get and you're pulling more than your weight for the league, then it's understandable that you're going to push for this. Absolutely. I don't remember the numbers exactly off the top of my head, but our buddy Tony Altimore was going through the numbers. We did a Florida State deep dive here about a week ago, and he brought out all the academic numbers, the football numbers, athletic department, the whole thing. Football revenue, Florida State was in a really good place. They made, I think the number was 52 million. I might be off. Again, the video is posted. You guys can watch it. It was a live stream about 2 weeks ago. I think Florida State made like 52 million in football last year, football revenue. But when Ohio State's making 137 million in football revenue, you know, you can keep up if you're really good at what you're doing, but it's kind of hard to do.
That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money.
They were 137, Texas at like 134, then went down from there.
Yeah. Florida State, just imagining what they could do with revenue. I don't think they're ever going to reach that mark, but that's fine. But Florida State being at where they were a couple of years ago, and then now finding its first real true successful season and reaching 10 wins. And it seems like they're about to go on a trend here, at least definitely starting off in this 2023 season of finding hopefully a deeper postseason run into an ACC championship, which would hopefully further them into their second college football playoff berth. You know, the numbers start getting a little bit different there. Definitely with the brand that Florida State is. It brings a major fan base across the country, but specifically not only the fan base, but the college football world likes watching the Seminoles. And you go back to Bobby Bowden and what he was able to accomplish. And that's where a lot of the fandom there grew and built a base outside of Tallahassee, outside of the state of Florida. And it's leveraged them to be able to bring in that much revenue. But when you're in a conference that you're kind of almost, you know, everybody's like, where how can we generate more revenue and how does the sharing go? It gets, you're put into a tough spot when, let's say, Florida State makes it to the ACC championship, makes it to a college football playoff this year. And that's your good thing out of it, is that you're going to get, you know, a little incentive there to make it to the college football playoff or an ACC championship, but you're missing out on what some other teams are getting with the amount of money that is enormous compared to the ACC versus SEC Big Ten. It's just, it puts Florida State in a rough spot. And I think Alford, Florida State's athletic director, is pushing as much as he can to get some of these other schools inside the ACC on board and not be solo dolo as much. And I know, just going off of a source I was talking to early or late last week, you know, Alford and Clemson, they're close in talks. These administrations are trying to work together here on a boatload of a lot of different things, but you know, the main focus here is how do we bring our schools more money that we think that we deserve. I mean, Clemson making it into those national championships, college football playoffs, ACC championships, you know, they deserve that. But, you know, Florida State on their trend upwards, and even when Florida State wasn't and at their best, they still were bringing in a good amount of revenue and bringing in ratings that deserve them to receive a good amount of money that goes into their pocket. But, you know, Florida State, Alfred, they're pushing to, I think it's a mix of both things. How can the ACC get better for right now in the short term, but also figure out a way to get out of it, you know, make some money now, but get out of it at the end of it all.
All right, folks, leave your comments and questions. We'll get to them. And again, as this basically unfolds as a story, which it will, again, we just have the parameters of it. We know what's going to happen. They announced it. They're working on a model. So it is going to happen. And again, it's going to be interesting to see to what degree they share the percentages and how much that's going to be incentive laden versus maybe just slightly. We'll see. So that's the base of what we need to find out. That's left right there. Logan, we've got our guy, Jason Priester, that covers Clemson, and we've had him on here before the Clemson games. And I was talking to him this week. He really thinks that, of course, every college football season's big for every major program to try to win a championship. But in terms of controlling the ACC, and we know what the history's been the last 10 years in terms of Florida State being the dominant program, and then that transition year or two, and then Clemson took off. And even though they had a down year for them, they still won the ACC and didn't lose a game in the conference. He just really thinks that this is a big year for Clemson, trying to maintain control, that they're not getting the recruits that they once did. Still a nice recruiting class last year, and going into this year, still putting together some things, not writing them off in any way, but it's not the program that it was just a few years ago. We did a watch party on the main channel behind the paywall, looking at the Clemson Ohio State playoff game in 2019, because it had so many crazy plays and officiating calls and everything. To watch that Clemson team from 3 seasons ago, going on 4 years ago, versus the one that we've seen. They got blasted by Notre Dame, blasted by Tennessee in the bowl game. Just not the level of play. Florida State's got a huge opportunity here to get back to where they were, and to show that they've gotten back to that place.
This is the year that they need to. There was a chance last year that they could have came away with the win. This time they put themselves in a little bit of a harder spot, just because they're going to go on the road up to Death Valley, and they still, if you think about 2 years ago, competed very well. I almost said Jaheim Bell, Jermaine Johnson with the big time play there that said, oh wait, hold up, FSU might upset the Tigers up there in Death Valley. Just couldn't finish it off, and that was because there was a lot of mistakes being made, and players still had to do some maturing. But you go back to last year, you saw the maturity change and them be able to compete there with the Tigers. And one of Florida State's biggest weakness has been going against Shipley. Will Shipley has been a menace to Florida State's defense and the linebacker room, defensive line. Florida State not having Fabian Lovett really kind of hurt them there in a lot of ways. And yes, you're getting Fabian Lovett back. That's fine. But really, it's about building depth. And they did that in the transfer portal with adding Braden Fisk, along with Darrell Jackson, just awaiting the waiver there, the Miami defensive tackle transfer who had a really strong spring. Braden Fisk also recovering from an injury, but expected to be a full go or full participant in this upcoming fall camp. And, Florida State, with what they're bringing back and what they were able to do in the transfer portal, this should be a game where Florida State comes away with the win. Now, what I'm expecting is that Florida State will face the Tigers twice this upcoming year. Just depending on how the Tar Heels look, I'm not too sold on Pittsburgh. Duke might be one that out of nowhere maybe is able to compete there at the end of the season. Now that the divisions are gone, this is going to be the top 2 teams in the ACC competing for that ACC championship in Charlotte. So things are a little bit different in how we will get a result this upcoming year. But looking at Florida State versus Clemson on the road, that first stretch of games for Florida State is not going to be the easiest. Florida State might have the leverage of being able to face a talented and good team with Brian Kelly's LSU Tigers. That will happen on the season opener in Orlando at a neutral site. That might be a good thing for Florida State to go ahead and understand what worked, what didn't against good competition, because I think FSU fans would rather have it be in that situation where you're going into that one and you're like, oh, wait, this isn't working, going off and the trenches, or I got to move a guy around. I got to figure out where I'm going to use Jaheim Bell. How am I going to utilize Keon Coleman with Johnny Wilson off to the other side? How does that fit my offense the best? And also a running back room that lost Trayshawn Ward. So this is definitely the season for Florida State to come away with a win, but there you can't overlook where Florida State has gotten hurt pretty badly, and that's Shipley running all over that defense. And I know there's a quarterback change, and you've got Klubnik now, and your biggest threat to him is just passing the ball. You're not really worried about Ukulele anymore. He's gone. But and his running game threat. But Klubnik, if he can get things together, he can be an impressive thrower. But you just got to hope that your star defensive end, Jared Verse, is able to get back there, and what you're able to do in the trenches in the transfer portal and bring back with Fabian Love and Joshua Farmer can change some things and bring pressure to a younger quarterback going into his second season. It's gonna be fun. This is gonna be a fun matchup to cover when we go into the season, and once it's game week, it's going to be seriously, definitely a college game day-esque type of atmosphere. And then, I don't think that will be it of us talking about a Florida State versus Clemson matchup in 2023. Could see it again in Charlotte for the ACC championship, but there's still some things that Florida State have to do to fix that and be able to beat the Clemson Tigers, but they worked on that this offseason, and they're bringing back that linebacker group that has learned the last 2 seasons. That entire linebacker room returns, and you should feel better about your situation going into this matchup that's going to happen earlier in the season than usual between Florida State and the Tigers.
So many times things don't play out the way we anticipate, but I got to say, this is the one conference where it appears as though the 2 teams at the top are so much better than everyone else. Again, you got to go out there and prove it. Man, it's tough to find another team to break up that party of those 2 going to the championship game. You mentioned maybe Pitt, Duke, North Carolina. Maybe they have outside chances. There's no Sam Hartman at Wake Forest to make them one of the better teams in the league anymore. And his replacement's his backup. I doubt that they're going to be a factor. So, yeah, this appears to be a collision course twice this season. And speaking of one of the factors or one of the big keys in the game you've talked about with Jared Verse, as we mentioned before we started the show, we've got Athlon's being one of the big magazines that's been released here. All the big, this is the time of year all the magazines get released. Athlon's looking at a first-team defense that includes Jared Verse. And so he's getting the preseason pub notoriety that you would think he would get. We see Jeremiah Trotter from Clemson on the first team as well.
Yeah, Jared Verse definitely getting some good recognition. I think he got his name out there week 1 against LSU during that matchup and really showed his ability to perform when it's the biggest stage, and that was the biggest stage he's ever been on. But definitely when you're facing LSU, another major brand in college football, he showed up and showed out. And, that will be another matchup we'll watch between him and Will Campbell, who was a 5-star, highly touted tackle for the Tigers. Got his butt whooped. And, that's what we kind of expected going into it. But now Will Campbell's had the experience. He's gone against some good SEC defensive ends throughout his first season, and he will do the same, and he's going to face Jared Verse once again in week 1 in Orlando. But Jared Verse getting a lot of recognition as deserving, and it was an impressive spring from him. Not much of a change, nothing much crazier than what we saw during his first season when we saw him in camp, but a lot more technique sound, I would say, from what I saw in the spring, and really taking care of his body, not going overboard. So trying to keep him healthy and stay that way will be humongous in what Florida State's trying to do and make a run in 2023.
FSU is also going to run into Cam Kinchins, one of the best safeties in college football out of Miami. And week 1, that big matchup against LSU and Harold Perkins.
Oof, that kid's
he's
good.
Crazy good.
Yeah, that's gonna be one that I can't wait to preview, just because of what Florida State's going to be bringing offensively. Like, it just should be just sign me up type of deal. If you like college football, I know there's a lot of college football just fans in here, not technically all FSU fans, but if you love college football, week 1 FSU LSU is about as best as you can get matchup wise.
Yep. Yeah, he jumps off the screen. He took over some games for them, especially going down the stretch. Then they're on the second team, got the transfer coming in from Virginia, Ventrell Cypress. So any comments you have on him and Logan, and anybody that's missing from the first few teams and going into the third team? We got Johnny Wilson at wide receiver, and we've got that seems to be it on the FSU side. Anybody else? If there was going to be another player, we'll take Jordan Travis out of the mix because he's the obvious one. Somebody that's going to be a first, second, or third team All-American at the end of the season that's not one of those 3 players.
I sort of want to, it's between 2 players. I would say Fabian Lovett or Keon Coleman offensively, Michigan State wide receiver transfer. We talked about him quite a bit last week after he picked Florida State, but, just going off of, and we'll see how well Mike Norvell and Ron Dugans and Coach Atkins, how they're going to be able to utilize him, but that could be a player that might be missing on this preseason list from Athlon. And then defensively, Fabian Lovett, if he can stay fully healthy and he can start off this fall camp being at a full steam ahead, that's a player that I think is one that might be getting overlooked just a tad, just because of the impact that he made last season. It showed a ton because right after he got hurt, and it was an LSU game, Florida State was kind of hurting internally there on the defensive line on the inside, and was having some fits with some of the run game defense that they were going against with some of the run game. So Fabian Lovett, if he's able to put on and grab some more sacks, I know statistically that's going to have to be upped quite a bit, but he makes an impact that, could put him onto a list that like, oh, maybe we missed him a tad bit. But Keon Coleman offensively, Fabian Lovett, those are probably 2 right now, just going off of the spring and then what I know Keon Coleman was able to do at Michigan State and go against some good competition and show up for some primetime games. I think that might be another player to keep an eye out on.
Antoine, we appreciate you being here. That question that you've got, let's save that for a call-in show. Hit me up with that question on a national show, and I will address that. Joey letting everyone know that we've got a sponsorship with Aura. I personally use it, so I can endorse it personally. Check it out. Identity theft's a real thing. Protect your finances, your family, your home, everything involved. Go to Aura. Logan, appreciate you, man. I know you got to get going here.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Mark. Hopefully we'll have some more stuff going on next week. Fingers crossed something will happen. We'll have more recruiting stuff coming up soon, a big recruiting couple of weeks ahead for Florida State once we get into June. So we will have some more exciting stuff to talk about. But, after this off season, this feels like the first week where we've had a nice and relaxed week, but something probably will happen, Mark. It always happens. Something crazy is going to happen tomorrow. So we'll be the ones that miss it, and we'll have to wait all the way until next Wednesday to talk about it. But appreciate you, Mark, and inviting me always on here.
Everybody catch Logan at 7:00. It's only in like 25 minutes on Knoll Game Day. I'm going to leave the link in here, and I'll hang on for a few minutes for people's questions and comments. And who knows, maybe Chris will show up. He's stuck in traffic. But catch Logan in 25 minutes on Knoll Game Day. Thanks, man. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate you. Have a good evening. See you guys.
Both of us are on the internet pretty much all the time. It's fun. You get to socialize. You get entertained. And in this day and age, it's pretty much necessary. And even if you're one of those people that's not on the internet all the time, you know what is? Your personal information. And there are people out there trying to hack you all the time. They want your email address. They want your phone number. They want your place of employment, and they want to do bad things with it. There's also fairly legitimate corporations and companies that want your information. They want it for marketing purposes. They're going to buy it. They're going to sell it. They're going to trade it. At the very least, it's annoying to you. It's a nuisance. It's aggravating. Your email gets cluttered up with spam email. You get robocalls all the time. That's at the very least. At the worst, it's a threat to your family, to your friends, to your personal information, to your banking, to your finances, to your security, to your safety, to your identity. It can be pretty serious. This video is sponsored by Aura. I got hacked and it was pretty obvious. This was about 8 or 9 months ago, and there were red flags all over the place. And I didn't exactly know what to do, but I knew I needed to do something quickly. I mean quickly. I researched 8, 10, or 12 companies immediately. I went all over the place. I asked people. I was online looking for the best company that could serve my needs and secure my information. You know who I found? Aura. And I'm glad I did. It was amazing. I contacted them. They got right back to me immediately. Their customer support is phenomenal. Their customer service is first-rate, friendly. They are detailed. They know what they're doing, and they do it right, and they will protect you. In addition to everything I just mentioned, they've got a password-keeping service. They keep your credit score. They notify you anytime there's a possible data breach. This has happened to me a number of times. I'm getting notifications all the time when there's a possible compromise to my credit score or anything that I don't want. They've got a VPN that will allow you to browse the internet anonymously. It's amazing. And again, customer service support available 24/7. Click the link in the description section below and get 2 free weeks of Aura. Protect your finances, protect your information, protect your privacy, protect your identity. I did, and I'm glad I did. Aura, thank you so much for what you've done for me, and now for my Voice of College Football community. All right, everyone. Again, aura.com/MarkRogers. Sign up there, free trial. It's definitely worth it. And it pleases me to be able to endorse someone that I work with already. So when I was approached by Aura, that was a good thing. I said, well, I've already used you for the last 8 or 9 months. So again, you get your free trial. Grab the link that Joey's provided there in the chat. I also wanted to show, since we did that deep dive on Florida State recently, and I wanted to get the figures accurate that Tony provided us. I don't know if you guys can really see that, but just trust me on this. I blew this up as much as I possibly could to be able to see which school is which school. But that's actually the number that I cited earlier, comparing Florida State to other schools, that if you go all the way to the far left for me, it's the far left, that bright green box, 137 million. That was football and men's basketball profit. I got to think that almost all of that was football for Ohio State. That's Ohio State. That's Michigan and next to it at 120 million. And then Florida State is somewhere in the middle of that at 53 million with there it is. Florida State at about 53 million in revenue in men's basketball and football. Actually, it's at 50 million. Miami at 53. These are deep dives that we're going to continue to do with our guy Tony. He's going to go through the rest of the car wash. We've already taken a deep dive on Michigan, USC, and Florida State. We're going to continue on through the other programs. Appreciate everybody being here at the Voice of College Football. Join us in just about 20 minutes on the Miami channel, talking Canes. Regardless of who you root for, it's always a good time with Cam Underwood. It's always insightful, very interesting, and a good time with Cam from State of the U. We get together 7 o'clock Eastern over on the Miami channel, and we will see you then. Meanwhile, I'm going to drop also the link to the Miami show, but also the link to Logan's show on Noel Game Day. That's coming up at 7 o'clock Eastern time as well.